Before we begin, if you're listening to this alone at night, you're exactly where you should be. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more true horror stories, disturbing encounters, and unexplained events uploaded every day. Now lock your doors, turn off the lights, and let's get into tonight's stories. It started with a simple text message. A wrong number. At least that's what I thought. One message, then another, then another. At first, it was annoying. Then it became confusing. Eventually, it became terrifying, because the person texting me seemed to believe I was someone else. And the more messages I received, the more I realized something disturbing. I don't think they had the wrong number. I think they knew exactly who they were texting. This happened in October of 2023. At the time, I was 27 years old and living outside Columbus, Ohio. I worked from home, kept mostly to myself, and rarely received calls or texts from unknown numbers. So when my phone buzzed at 11:48 p.m. one Thursday night, I almost ignored it. Almost. The message simply read, "Are you there?" No name. No context. Nothing. Just those 3 words. I assumed it was a wrong number. It happens. People make mistakes. Reasonable explanation. I replied politely, told them they had the wrong person, then went to bed. The next morning, another message arrived. Stop joking. My stomach tightened slightly, because now the situation felt odd. Not alarming, just odd. I replied again, explained I wasn't the person they were trying to reach. No response. Several hours passed. Then another message appeared. You weren't supposed to answer. My blood immediately ran cold. Because the wording felt wrong. Very wrong. The realization genuinely unsettled me. I stopped responding. The conversation should have ended there. Instead, the messages continued. Every day. Sometimes several. Sometimes only one. The content gradually became stranger. Increasingly personal. Increasingly specific. The sender referenced locations. Schedules. Conversations. None of them made sense. At least initially. Then one message caught my attention. A specific street name. My blood immediately ran cold. Because it was my street. The realization genuinely frightened me. Because I had never provided my address. Not once. Still, I tried convincing myself it was coincidence. Maybe. Until the next message arrived. The message read, "Your porch light is still broken." My stomach immediately dropped. Because my porch light was broken. At that exact moment, the realization hit instantly. Whoever was texting me knew where I lived. The fear arrived all at once. I rushed outside. The street appeared empty. No vehicles. No pedestrians. Nothing. Yet the message existed. The knowledge existed. The realization genuinely terrified me. I contacted police. A report was filed. The number was documented. Unfortunately, little information could be recovered. Prepaid phone. Temporary account. No useful identification. Nothing. Still, the messages continued, and they became worse. Over the following week, the sender started referencing daily activities. My commute, my grocery store, my gym, small details, specific details. The realization genuinely frightened me, because now it appeared somebody was watching. Not occasionally, regularly. The fear gradually became overwhelming. Then one evening, another message arrived. A photograph. My blood immediately turned to ice. Because the image showed my vehicle. Parked outside my workplace. Taken recently. Very recently. The realization instantly changed everything. This was no longer a wrong number. Not even close. Somebody intentionally contacted me. The investigation expanded. Police became more involved. Additional reports were filed. Phone records examined. Surveillance footage reviewed. Then investigators discovered something disturbing. Several other people received similar messages. Different cities, different numbers, same style, same progression. The realization genuinely unsettled everyone involved. Because it suggested planning, not coincidence. Eventually authorities identified a suspect. Someone connected to multiple harassment complaints. Someone who frequently initiated contact through wrong number messages. The explanation finally made sense. Mostly, but one detail still bothers me. Because investigators later recovered deleted messages from the device. Messages never delivered. One draft stood out immediately. A sentence written shortly after I first replied. The sentence still gives me chills. It read, "He answered faster than the last one." Those words have haunted me ever since, because they suggest something terrifying. Not that I accidentally became involved, but that somebody was comparing reactions, studying responses, watching behavior, and for a period of time, I became one of the people being studied. The voicemail arrived at 2:17 a.m. I know the exact time because the notification woke me up. At first, I assumed it was spam, some robocall, some telemarketer, something I could delete and forget. Instead, it became the strangest phone call I've ever received, because the voicemail sounded like it was meant for someone else. And somehow, it described events that hadn't happened yet. This happened in November of 2022. At the time, I lived outside Denver, Colorado. I worked as a network technician. My schedule was predictable. My life was routine, and nothing remotely unusual ever happened. Until the voicemail. That particular night, I woke up to my phone vibrating on the nightstand. Unknown number. No missed call. Just a voicemail notification. The realization immediately felt strange, because voicemail messages usually follow calls. This one didn't. Still, phone systems are weird. Reasonable explanation. At least initially. Half asleep, I opened the voicemail. Then listened. The message lasted approximately 30 seconds. A male voice. Calm. Older. The caller sounded nervous. Not frightened. Nervous. The message began with, "If you're hearing this, I'm probably too late." My stomach tightened slightly, because the wording felt strange. Very strange. The caller continued, talking quickly, as if time mattered. Then came the part that genuinely unsettled me. The caller referenced a traffic accident. Specific location. Specific intersection. Specific time. The realization immediately confused me, because I didn't recognize the details at all. The message ended abruptly. No name. No explanation. Nothing. Just silence. I assumed it was meant for someone else. Wrong number. Simple. Then I went back to sleep. The following afternoon, I was driving home from work, and my blood immediately ran cold, because traffic had completely stopped. Ahead sat emergency vehicles, police, fire trucks, ambulances. The realization immediately bothered me. Then I recognized the intersection. My stomach dropped, because it was the same intersection mentioned in the voicemail. The exact intersection, the exact location, the exact details. The realization genuinely unsettled me. Still, coincidences happen. Strange coincidences. Uncomfortable coincidences. Reasonable explanation. At least initially. Then another voicemail arrived. The following night. Same number. Same voice. My blood immediately ran cold, because the caller referenced another event. A power outage. Specific neighborhood. Specific time. The realization immediately felt wrong. Very wrong. The message ended the same way. Abruptly. Without explanation. The following day, the outage occurred. Exactly where the voicemail described. The realization genuinely frightened me, because now coincidence felt increasingly unlikely. Very unlikely. I contacted the phone company, then police. Neither found anything useful. The number appeared inactive, unregistered, effectively non-existent. The realization made no sense at all. Still, the messages continued. Every few days. Always the same voice. Always brief. Always describing future events. Small events. Accidents. Power failures. Road closures. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to become impossible to ignore. The fear gradually intensified, because I couldn't understand why the messages were reaching me. Not the intended recipient. Not supposedly. Then one evening, everything changed, because the voicemail referenced me. Directly. My blood immediately turned to ice. The caller mentioned my workplace, mentioned my vehicle, mentioned my commute. The realization instantly changed everything. This was no longer a wrong number. Not anymore. The message ended with a sentence I'll never forget. Don't take the highway tomorrow. My heart immediately started racing, because now the warning felt personal. Very personal. The following morning, I changed my route. Partly out of fear, partly out of curiosity. The decision haunted me later that afternoon. Because a serious multi-vehicle accident occurred on the highway, almost exactly when I normally would have been there. The realization genuinely terrified me. Not because I believed the caller could see the future, because I couldn't explain any of it at all. The investigation became an obsession. Phone records, carrier reports, technical analysis, everything. Then investigators discovered something disturbing. The voicemail timestamps didn't make sense. My stomach immediately tightened, because several messages appeared to originate before the associated events occurred. Not hours before, days before. The realization genuinely unsettled everyone involved, because the metadata itself looked wrong. Not impossible, just wrong. Eventually, the messages stopped. Completely. No explanation. No farewell. Nothing. For months, life returned to normal. Mostly. Then one final voicemail arrived. Nearly 6 months later. The same voice. The same number. The same feeling. My blood immediately ran cold. Because the message contained only one sentence. A sentence that still keeps me awake. The caller said, "I finally got the right number." Then the voicemail ended. No additional messages ever followed. No answers emerged. No explanation appeared. Nothing. To this day, I don't know who left those voicemails. I don't know who they were intended for. And I don't know how the caller seemed to know things before they happened. But one detail still bothers me. Because investigators later recovered deleted voicemail fragments. Corrupted recordings. Mostly unusable. Mostly static. Except for one partially recovered sentence. A sentence never delivered to my phone. A sentence that still gives me chills. It said, "He isn't the person I'm trying to save." Those words have haunted me ever since. Because they suggest something terrifying. Not that the calls were intended for me, but that somebody else was supposed to receive them. And somewhere along the way, the messages started reaching the wrong person. Or maybe, the right person after all. The first call lasted less than 30 seconds. A man asked for Sarah. I told him he had the wrong number. He apologized and hung up. Simple. Normal. Forgettable. At least it should have been. Because 3 days later, he called again. Then again. Then again. And after the 10th call, I realized something terrifying. I don't think he was trying to reach Sarah at all. I think he was trying to reach me. This happened in early 2023. At the time, I lived outside Charlotte, North Carolina. I worked remotely, lived alone, and generally avoided answering calls from unknown numbers. The first call happened on a Tuesday evening, around 8 p.m. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Instead, I answered. A male voice immediately asked, "Is Sarah there?" I explained he had the wrong number. The caller apologized, then hung up. End of story. Or so I thought. 3 days later, the same number called again. My stomach tightened slightly, because repeat wrong numbers happen. But they're uncommon. Still, reasonable explanation. I answered. The caller asked for Sarah again. Same voice. Same wording. I reminded him he had the wrong number. Several seconds of silence followed. Then he apologized. Hung up. The situation felt strange. Not alarming. Just strange. Then the calls became regular. Every few days. Always asking for Sarah. Always the same voice. Always the same apology. The repetition genuinely bothered me. Because nobody accidentally dials the same wrong number that many times. Not over several weeks. Eventually I blocked the number. Problem solved. Or so I thought. The following week, another number called. My blood immediately ran cold. Because it was the same voice. The same man. The same question. Is Sarah there? The realization instantly changed everything. Because now it wasn't a mistake. Not anymore. I asked directly who he was. The caller ignored the question. Instead, he repeated, "Is Sarah there?" The response genuinely unsettled me. I hung up. Immediately. Then more calls arrived. Different numbers. Same voice. Same question. The pattern continued for months. The fear gradually intensified. Because now the calls felt deliberate. Very deliberate. Then things became worse. One evening, the caller asked something new. My blood immediately turned to ice. Because instead of asking for Sarah, he asked, "How's the new apartment?" The realization hit instantly. Because I had recently moved. And I had never told him. Not once. The fear arrived all at once. I asked how he knew that. The caller remained silent, then hung up. The realization genuinely terrified me, because now the calls felt personal, very personal. The following weeks brought more questions. Questions nobody should have known. My workplace, my gym, my daily routine, small details, specific details. The realization genuinely frightened me, because somebody clearly knew things about my life. The question became obvious. How? Police became involved. Reports were filed. Numbers documented. Records reviewed. Unfortunately, every number traced back to temporary services. Disposable accounts. Nothing useful. The investigation stalled. Then one evening, everything changed. Because the caller left a voicemail. A voicemail unlike any previous contact. The message began normally, then suddenly shifted. The voice sounded frustrated, almost angry. The caller said, "You should have told me she wasn't there." My stomach immediately dropped, because I had told him, repeatedly, for months. The realization genuinely unsettled me. Then the voicemail continued, and what he said next still gives me chills. He began describing my apartment building, the front entrance, the parking lot, the stairwell, everything. My blood immediately turned to ice, because the descriptions were accurate, perfectly accurate. The realization instantly changed everything. Somebody wasn't just calling me. Somebody had physically seen the building. The fear became overwhelming. Police increased patrols. Additional reports were filed. Investigators reviewed nearby surveillance footage. Then they found something. A man, standing near the apartment complex. Multiple times. Different dates. Different weeks. Always alone. Always watching. The realization genuinely terrified me, because now the threat felt real. Very real. The investigation expanded, and eventually authorities identified a suspect. Someone connected to prior stalking complaints. Someone known for becoming fixated on specific individuals. The calls finally stopped after that. Completely. No more voicemails. No more questions. Nothing. The story should have ended there. Mostly it did. But one detail still bothers me. Because during the investigation, detectives recovered notes from the suspect's storage unit. Pages and pages of handwritten observations. Addresses. Descriptions. Schedules. Most made little sense. Then they showed me one page. A page containing my phone number. My stomach immediately dropped, because next to the number sat a handwritten sentence. A sentence that still keeps me awake. It read, "Still pretending not to be Sarah." Those 5 words have haunted me ever since, because they suggest something terrifying. Not that the caller had the wrong number. Not that he was confused, but that he genuinely believed I was lying. For months. No matter what I said. No matter what evidence existed. No matter how impossible it was. And that's the detail that scares me most. Because mistakes can be corrected. Misunderstandings can be explained. But when somebody becomes convinced of something that isn't true, sometimes no explanation in the world can change their mind.